There's something about the way Sigma males operate that fundamentally threatens centralized power structures. And the more men begin to understand this, the harder those structures work to suppress that knowledge. What I'm about to share isn't conspiracy theory, it's observable reality. It explains why independent men are systematically discouraged in modern society. I'm going to reveal the one thing about Sigma males that makes them incompatible with centralized systems of control. This isn't politics. This isn't left versus right. This is about power, how every major institution needs conformity and dependency to function, and why Sigma males pose a direct threat to that requirement. Once you see this clearly, you'll understand why so much of modern society is engineered to prevent men from developing Sigma traits. You'll finally understand that the pressure you feel to conform isn't random. It's deliberate. It's systematic. Before we go deeper, I've put something together for you, Sigma's Black Book of Untouchable Power. This isn't motivational fluff. It's the kind of mindset and strategy that turns men into forces other people don't challenge, don't question, and don't underestimate. It won't be available forever. Grab it from the description or pinned comment while you can. Now, let's break down the truth they never wanted you to figure out. The secret: economic independence creates political independence. Here it is, the uncomfortable truth that every centralized power structure hopes you never fully understand. When you achieve economic independence, you become politically uncontrollable, socially unmanageable, and psychologically untouchable. Because at its core, control is never about morality, safety, or order. It has always been about dependency. Governments, corporations, and institutions maintain influence by ensuring people cannot function without them. The mechanism is simple but brutally effective. You depend on your job, so you tolerate unreasonable demands, silent pressures, and corporate compliance culture. You depend on government benefits, so you align your behavior, beliefs, and actions with whatever policies they attach strings to. You depend on financial systems, so you willingly submit to surveillance, regulation, monitoring, and digital tracking disguised as security. Dependency creates leverage. Leverage creates control. Control creates compliance. This is the cycle that keeps most men obedient. But Sigma males instinctively break this cycle, often without even realizing it. They refuse to build a life on foundations someone else controls. They structure their world like a fortress, lean, flexible, mobile, and self-sustaining. A Sigma male builds multiple income sources, so no single employer has power over him. Keeps liquid assets, so he's not hostage to loans, banks, or credit systems. Develops portable, high-value skills, so he can earn anywhere without needing institutional permission or approval. Minimizes fixed costs, so he can walk away from any toxic environment, job, city, relationship, or system, without hesitation. This makes him one of the hardest types of men to control. You cannot threaten a man's livelihood when he has intentionally designed his life so that no institution holds the keys to it. This is exactly why centralized systems feel deeply threatened by Sigma men. A man who does not fear losing his job can speak truth without trembling. A man who does not rely on government assistance can question authority without consequence. A man who does not depend on social approval can think independently, act freely, and live authentically. Economic independence is the foundation of every other form of independence. Intellectual independence, emotional independence, social independence, political independence, moral independence. Once a man no longer depends on the system for survival, the system loses its ability to shape his identity, dictate his beliefs, or control his choices. And this, right here, is why modern society is engineered to make economic independence feel nearly impossible. Because the moment too many men become independent thinkers who cannot be economically coerced, the entire structure of control collapses. The system is built on manufactured dependency. Once you begin to recognize this pattern, you can't unsee it. It's woven into every layer of modern life, subtle, quiet, and engineered to keep people dependent from the moment they enter the system to the moment they exit it. Just look at how society structures the average person's life. Stable employment doesn't simply require skill, it demands decades of compliance. The entire corporate ladder is built on the expectation that you will obey, conform, and maintain predictable behavior in exchange for a paycheck. Home ownership, the so-called American dream, is packaged as stability but functions like a financial prison. A 30-year mortgage keeps you tied to a location, a lifestyle, and a job you may not even like, because you can't afford to lose the income needed to service the debt. Healthcare, one of the most basic human needs, is deliberately tied to employment. If you want to stay healthy, you have to stay compliant. If you lose your job, you lose your coverage, which means you lose your freedom to take risks. Student loans ensure that young adults start life already trapped. Debt that lasts decades forces them to choose safe, conventional careers and discourages them from taking alternative paths that foster independence. And the root of all this begins early. The education system trains obedience, not independence. From childhood, you are conditioned to follow instructions without questioning, respect authority without understanding, seek approval from institutions instead of trusting your own judgment. Independent thinking, skepticism of power, and entrepreneurship, the very traits that lead to personal freedom, are downplayed, discouraged, or outright punished. Children are taught to fit in, not to stand out. As you grow, society reinforces these pressures at every step. You are expected to earn the right credentials, work the right job, behave in the right way, and follow the approved life script. Stepping outside that script is labeled irresponsible, risky, or rebellious, not because it actually is, but because it threatens the system's ability to control you. Even entertainment and media play their part. They push narratives that normalize dependence, glorify conformity, and portray life outside traditional systems as unstable or dangerous. The constant message is simple. Stay inside the system. Trust the system. Depend on the system. And the reason is just as simple. Dependent people are manageable people. People who rely on institutions for survival are easier to influence, easier to predict, and easier to control. But Sigma males slip through the cracks. They reject the idea that success must come from institutional approval. They refuse to let their identity be shaped by systems designed for conformity. Instead, they carve out unconventional paths that create autonomy rather than dependency. This is what makes them so difficult for centralized power structures to handle. They're hard to monitor because they don't follow predictable patterns. They're hard to manipulate because they don't rely on external validation. They're hard to break because they've built their lives to function independently of societal pressure. Sigma males don't escape the system, they outgrow it. They operate alongside it, not beneath it. And that makes them the most dangerous kind of free. Why independent men have always threatened power? Throughout human history, truly independent men have been the greatest threat to any system built on centralized control. Kings, empires, religious authorities, and modern governments have all shared one fear in common: the man who does not need them to survive. Independence has always been the foundation of resistance. A man who can meet his own needs, who can feed himself, protect his family, create value, and organize his community, cannot be easily intimidated or manipulated. These were the men who stood up when rulers overreached, who refused to bow to unjust demands, and who built parallel structures that allowed people to live freely outside of state control. This pattern is consistent across cultures and centuries. The farmers, craftsmen, warriors, explorers, inventors, and frontier builders were the ones who pushed society forward, not because they were obedient, but because they weren't. These men asked questions. They challenged edicts. They defended their autonomy and the autonomy of those around them. Systems of power have always feared the man who thinks independently and acts without needing external approval, because such a man becomes unpredictable, unmanageable. Modern institutions understand this perfectly, which is why male independence has been systematically eroded over time. Traditional masculine skills, building, fixing, hunting, navigating, repairing, defending, skills that once made men self-sufficient, have been devalued, mocked, regulated, or pushed into irrelevance. The more capable a man is on his own, the less he relies on institutional structures, and the weaker those institutions become. So society subtly conditions men to abandon these competencies, replacing them with passive consumerism and dependency. Once thriving male mentorship spaces, brotherhoods, guilds, workshops, community groups, rites of passage, have been dismantled or weakened. These were the places where wisdom, discipline, survival skills, and self-respect were passed down. When they vanish, men lose the generational knowledge that kept them self-reliant. In their place, institutional schooling has risen, not to empower, but to train compliance. Instead of teaching independence, it teaches memorization, obedience, and deference toward authority. Instead of producing sovereign individuals, it produces dependent citizens. The message men receive from modern society is constant and relentless. You're not capable on your own. Let experts handle your life. Trust the system. Stay dependent. But that message is not about safety. And it's not about progress. It's about control. Sigma males disrupt this agenda completely. They maintain broad competence across multiple domains: intellectual, social, financial, physical, and strategic. They're not specialists who collapse without a system, they're generalists who can adapt to almost any environment. Every skill they acquire becomes another layer of independence, another form of leverage that cannot be taken away. They don't wait for permission, validation, or institutional support. They build their own paths, their own structures, and their own rules. And that is precisely why they threaten centralized power. A man who does not depend on the system becomes a man the system cannot control. A man who cannot be controlled becomes a man who must be feared. Modern control is psychological, digital, and invisible. What makes modern control more dangerous than anything in the past is that it's almost completely invisible. Power today doesn't need chains, guards, or physical force. It doesn't need to break your body, it only needs to shape your mind and monitor your behavior. The most effective control systems are the ones you don't even realize you're submitting to. They're woven into the daily tools you use, the platforms you rely on, the conveniences you think are harmless. And because the control is subtle, most people never question it. Look at the digital world we live in. Algorithms determine what information you see, what opinions you're exposed to, and what ideas get buried or elevated. Financial systems log every purchase, track your habits, and build psychological profiles with frightening accuracy. Workplace software measures your productivity down to your keystrokes, your break times, and even your passive mouse movements. It is total surveillance, but wrapped in the appearance of efficiency, convenience, and quality control. These systems do not exist to empower you. They exist to guide your behavior, especially if you depend on them for your survival. If your livelihood is tied to a corporate platform, you'll accept invasive monitoring. If your status relies on social approval, you'll censor your own thoughts. If you're locked into digital financial systems, you'll tolerate intrusion and data harvesting. Dependency gives these systems leverage, and leverage becomes control. Sigma males understand this dynamic at a level most people never question. Unlike the average person, they don't accept the default assumptions of modern life. They maintain a minimal digital footprint, not because they're hiding, but because they value sovereignty. They guard their privacy because they recognize that information is power, and giving too much of it away allows systems to predict and manipulate behavior. They diversify their income streams so no single institution, employer, or platform has the power to shut down their livelihood. And they avoid single points of failure, technological, financial, or social, that could trap them. This approach isn't paranoia. It's awareness. When a system knows everything about you, it can map your habits, anticipate your reactions, and influence your decisions without your awareness. Behavioral prediction leads to behavioral control. That's why modern governments work so aggressively to eliminate financial privacy. Cash transactions are increasingly restricted. Cryptocurrency is heavily regulated or framed as dangerous. Banking privacy has been erased under the justification of security. Every payment, transfer, and purchase is monitored, flagged, or categorized. The official reason is always the same. This is for safety. This is to prevent crime. This is to protect you. But when you strip away the PR, the truth is simple. It's about power. It's about control. Visible finances are controllable finances. Once everything you do is traceable, your freedom becomes conditional. If they can freeze your money, they can freeze your movement. If they can freeze your movement, they can freeze your voice. And once they freeze your voice, they own your choices. Sigma males reject this by design. They structure their lives so that no single system, digital, financial, or corporate, holds the keys to their freedom. The Sigma solution: build parallel independence. Centralized power fears one thing: irrelevance. They fear the moment people stop relying on them. Sigma males naturally build parallel systems. Businesses that operate across borders. Skills that work in any market. Networks based on trust, not institutions. Assets outside centralized control. Communities built on shared values. They're not rebelling. They're simply creating alternatives. And nothing threatens power more than alternatives. Control systems collapse when people simply stop needing them. This is why institutions attack. Homeschooling. Small businesses. Cash transactions. Alternative communities. Informal economies. Independent men. The message is always the same. Stop being independent. Stop thinking for yourself. Stay inside the approved system. But Sigma males keep slipping out of the cage. Technology helps independence more than institutions can stop it. The strange reality of the modern world is that while institutions tighten their grip, technology keeps opening back doors they can't close. Every attempt to centralize control ends up creating new tools that let independent thinkers, especially Sigma males, slip out of reach. When used deliberately, technology becomes one of the strongest weapons for personal freedom. Remote work is a perfect example. It broke the old chains that tied people to specific cities, offices, and local economies. A man can now earn from anywhere: a cheaper town, another country, or a place that gives him a better life. This kills one of the system's oldest forms of control: geographic dependency. Crypto and decentralized finance add another layer of independence. For the first time, individuals can store and move value without needing permission from banks or governments. Even with increasing regulations, decentralized systems still offer financial autonomy that older generations never had. Traditional money is easy to monitor, but crypto makes sovereignty possible. Online education has changed the game too. Instead of relying on institutional degrees, people can master high-value skills through digital courses, mentors, and global communities. Knowledge is no longer controlled by universities. Anyone with discipline can reinvent themselves, without waiting for approval. Global communication breaks the old economic barriers. One person can reach clients worldwide, build a digital audience, or create income streams that bypass traditional institutions entirely. Borders don't control opportunity anymore, and gatekeepers have lost their power. For every method of control institutions create, technology opens several paths to freedom. They know this, that's why censorship, surveillance, and regulations keep increasing. These are signs of fear, not strength. But Sigma males move faster than these systems can adapt. They see technology as infrastructure for freedom, not entertainment. They learn quickly, evolve constantly, and build lives that no single institution can dominate. While institutions move slowly, Sigma males move with the speed of the digital age. And that's why they stay ahead, no matter how tightly the system tries to close its fist. The core truth. Economic independence creates political independence. And systems built on control cannot survive widespread independence. Sigma males embody the one thing centralized power cannot tolerate. A self-sufficient man who doesn't need approval, permission, or validation. He is not dangerous because he fights the system, but because he proves the system is optional. That is the truth they never wanted you to know. You don't need them as much as they need you dependent. Your next move. If this message resonated, do two things. Comment self-sufficient to show you're building your life outside the system. Subscribe for weekly content on practical independence, self-sufficiency, and Sigma mindset strategies. You are not powerless. You are not trapped. You are simply living in a world designed to keep you dependent. Break the pattern, and you break their control.